What's going on, irregulars? Welcome back on another Thursday. It's your boy, Bobby.
He's an asshole.
Just kidding. It's Katie.
Yeah.
But did I sound like you?
You did a pretty good job, I'm not going to lie.
Thank you.
I love how that's like now a thing. You know what I mean? I mean, I hate it because like everybody makes fun of me.
He loves it.
No, I hate it.
I hate saying, it's your girl, Katie. Like, that's not me.
Yeah, I know.
So.
We need a tagline for you.
Yeah,
Like,
we're not accepting recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, I got mine. It's kind of sold at this point. You know, I don't really have a choice. And yeah, actually the guys down in Florida like played it on I think I mentioned this before. They played it on Scott's TV. And they slowed it down, like the podcast down to like half speed, and it was just like, yeah, it's your boy. And then they Snapchatted it to me, and I was like, motherfuckers.
Oh, you weren't even there?
No,
That's amazing.
No,
I love that.
God damn it. There was like a whole party of people, too. I was like, motherfucker.
Love that. All right. Well, before we get into our weekends, I just wanted to make an announcement. We are looking for guests. Last week's episode, which let's just quickly say, like last week was just, oh my gosh.
Where do we begin?
Jay and Sarah, if you have not listened to episode 24, it was one for the books.
Yeah, so many people reached out, and they were just like I said, people who I haven't talked to in like a couple weeks or even a couple months or something like that. But I knew they were listeners. They like reach out and they're like, bruh, what the fuck? And I knew exactly what they were talking about. And I would just respond back like, pretty wild, right?
It was amazing. So again, a big thank you to Jay and Sarah for opening up about their polyamorous relationship and having a relationship with a woman named Gabby. They have actually decided they're going to start their own podcast as well.
If I'm not mistaken, they went to go record their first episode last night? I think it was last night.
My sense of time is
off.
Yeah.
But I think they recorded their first episode last night. So we're gonna look forward to cross promoting with those guys.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be pretty cool.
But with that said, we're looking for more guests. We're so excited to travel outside of our network last week. We've been so fortunate to have such a great network of friends and family to pull from thus far, but being able to talk to someone that we have never met before was just really cool. So if you would like to be on the show, please hit us up, slide in the DMs. I'm not getting any DMs, so if this is what it takes to DM me, like, I guess I'm fine with that. But just, make us an offer we can't refuse. We're looking for unique stories, maybe a struggle that you've been through, something that you want to bring awareness to.
Yeah, like something you're super passionate about. It can be literally simple as like, I'm really passionate about XYZ. You know
like
what I mean?
Starfish. Like, do you like starfish? Like, come talk about it with us. Like, yeah, we don't know anything about starfish.
Yeah. What? How did you come up with
There's
that?
There's a starfish behind your head on the wall. But okay, so all right. Anyway, how was your weekend, Bobby?
It was good. Real low key. Like, I kept it simple. I work. Surprise, surprise. Just worked all weekend, and then me and my buddy Nick went out, and Alec went out to Your Life Gym. We had spoke about it. I think it was episode 11, the first mental health and physical health gym, that is out there, and crushed a good workout and whatnot. So you've probably seen it on my Instagram story, me sharing different things from there, working together with a foundation called Heart Support as well too. So we're looking to build a relationship and hopefully get Joel Chandler, who's the head trainer there, on the podcast as well to speak to, like I said, the first mental and physical health gym. So me, Nick, and Alex just went out there. I'm so sore from our workout. It was just a good time. Grabbed some good food afterwards, and at Primati Brothers, they have like fat sandwiches. So we basically like neglected our entire workout.
I love that.
Great workout, and then we just shoved these disgusting sandwiches down our throats. So but besides that, yeah, it was pretty simple weekend. How about yourself?
Well, last week, I think if you guys know me at all, I was holding back a little bit last week.
Right.
I was still recovering a little bit from the mess that I had created last weekend.
What type of mess?
Well, for those of you who don't know or have chosen to forget, last Sunday was Valentine's Day. And
most of us chose to forget, just to let you know.
So did I on Valentine's Day. So I've been seeing a guy for a couple months now. Still not a boyfriend because I have trust issues, etc. But yeah, so basically I have been working really hard in therapy, like I've mentioned, to get through some toxic, traumatic, learned behaviors that I kind of grew into in my previous relationship. So it's been tough for me to start feeling like I was ready to date in general, as we know. I had actually sworn off dating forever. I went on 3 Hinge dates with the same guy, and I was like, fuck this. Like, I'm getting therapy. I'm going to work on me. I'm going to figure myself out. And then I met this guy that I'm seeing now out of nowhere, and things have been really, really good so far.
Yeah. So how did you destroy it?
So naturally, everything was going well. So my brain was like, things are going, you're happy? Like, this is pretty healthy. Like, sabotage it. Fuck it up. Like, fake a fight. So
it's like the devil on your shoulder, like, yo, psst, fuck this thing up. Let's do this.
It was like, we had a wonderful night together on Friday, and I woke up and I was like, you know that meme from The Grinch where it's like, he starts to like put on the Santa suit and he's like, help me, I'm feeling. Like, that's exactly how I started to feel.
Gotta love it.
Friday night. I'm like, in the moment when I'm with him, I'm like, this is great. And then I wake up Saturday and I'm doing my thing, and I'm like, holy shit, like, this is not going to end well, like, abort mission. So I go out with my friends Saturday night, get pretty tuned up, and around 3 a.m., I'm still going, and he sends me a text. He gets up to go to the bathroom, and he's just doing, like, talk to text, and he spelled my name K-A-T-I-E, which, for those of you who should fucking know, it's spelled K-A-I-T-Y. And Tequila Katie in me was like, you don't know how to spell my name? Like, do you even know anything about me? Do you even like me at all? And I'm like, and I know, like, I knew that it wasn't that big of a deal, but I think I was just like searching for something to get pissed about. So
yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah,
Super
the opportunity
healthy.
presented itself, and I was like, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
So that carried into Sunday morning, which was Valentine's Day. I woke up and I was feeling like I still had rage in my heart, and it was unsolicited rage completely. So I'm like, I'm not going to text him first. I'm going to wait for him to hit me up. And like, we had plans. He was supposed to come over, make me dinner, drink wine, like have a chill Valentine's Day. Cause we're not like a couple, but I mean, we've been seeing each other.
Enough.
Yeah, enough. Like, I'm definitely not hitting anybody else up on Valentine's Day. Yeah. So I thought. So my friends end up FaceTiming me like, hey, let's go get breakfast. And by that, they mean like booze.
Let's go get wasted.
So
at 9 a.m.
I'm like, in my head, I'm like, okay, well, he didn't text me yet. So like, I'll just go get a Bloody Mary and have like eggs, and I'll like feel better, and like I'll hit him up and everything will be fine. And then like, that's not what happened. I just like started like seeing red, and like, I'm like, you know what would make this a good day if I just take shots of Rumpelmans and then blame the whole day on him, fake a fight, and make him think it's his fault. And then that way I can booze with my friends and I can avoid the feelings and also make him think it's his fault in the same breath. Like, what do you think? And all my friends are like, you're insane. And I'm like,
you're insane. Here's another shot.
So we're doing it. Like, at one point, one of my friends looked at me and he's like, I feel like you know what you're doing, right? Because I'm like, oh, what do I do, guys? Like, we're fighting. Then around 7 p.m., I started to kind of sober up, and I was like, oh no. Oh shit, what did I do? What am I doing? And I'm trying to like reel it in, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. Like, I didn't mean anything I said. He's like, can we just like, let's just talk tomorrow. So when we recorded the episode last week, that was tomorrow, and we had not yet discussed anything. So I took him out to a nice dinner this past Friday, picked up the tab.
You suck up.
You know.
You're a kiss ass.
I had to, dude. It was damage control.
How's that shit smell in your nose, you brown noser?
Well, I had to. I was like, I really gotta pull out all the stops. So we're fine now. Everything's okay. I'm in a better place, and I'm just trying to live in the moment and not overthink things. Which, shout out to my females out there. We all know like that's hard. So
chill. Guys overthink everything too. Trust me.
So that's where I'm at. I had a good weekend. I'm trying to keep things chill and happy, and stay tuned next week to see where I'm at.
Stay tuned until next week to see how I fuck it up this weekend.
Yeah. So anyway, to get into the episode this week, we have a guest with us. We do want to mention before we get into this topic that some of the material in this episode may be triggering to those who struggle with their relationship with food or eating disorders. So we just wanted to let you guys know and make sure that you're aware of the sensitivity of this subject before we get into it.
This is a guest who I've actually known probably since I was like, I think 12 years old, met in middle school and whatnot. And she actually reached out to us and was like, hey, there's some things that I want to discuss with you, but let's instead of like bringing up the topic, let's introduce who she is. So I would like to welcome Shannon. How are you doing, Shannon?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Bobby.
It's exciting to have you on. It's really weird to think from 7th grade when we met. Did you ever think, like, if someone, first things first, were podcasts even a thing in 7th grade? Like, you
I
know,
don't know.
Not that I knew of.
Nah, probably.
I had instant messenger back then. That's all I know.
AIM, yeah, that's right. And then, could you imagine though? If you're like, hey, in like 20 years, you know what I mean? Like, you'll be on this podcast.
20 years. I'm like 15.
12.
Give us some grace.
It's chill. It's like
I
pretty
just turned
close.
30, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy late birthday. Yesterday was Shannon's birthday.
Yes. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Shannon, you reached out to us and you wanted to discuss some things on the podcast, share on our platform.
Which just goes to show, if you reach out and you have a good topic, we will bring you on. So
yes.
So Shannon, we're not going to really, it's an interesting topic, I think, that we talked about. Basically, we're here to talk about food and people's relationship with food. We don't want to preface it saying we're here to talk about eating disorders and body image, but more over just how people have that relationship with food. So first of all, before we get into that, tell us about yourself.
Okay, so yes, my birthday was yesterday. I'm 30 years old. I have known Bobby for a very long time. We grew up in Pennsylvania, and I am going to be moving to Colorado as of this weekend. So
so many great things happening for you.
Lifelong resident, moving out west very soon. So I guess a little bit of background about my story. And I do just want to preface, before we go into anything, that I'm definitely not a medical or health professional in any way. I'm not prescribing advice for anybody. This is just my personal experience. And I'm not the poster child for anything with food and relationships.
But that's what we like. That's what makes this podcast what it is, a regular person's take on what may be seen as an irregular topic.
Yes. So I just want to put that out there for anybody listening in case,
That was Shannon's disclaimer.
Yeah.
It was. So a little bit of my background with kind of how this came to be. I mean, growing up, I never really had issues that I knew of revolving around my body and food, because when you're a kid, it's just food is food, and my body is whatever. You just don't even think twice about it. And I think as I got older, and I think when I was I did a lot when I was younger. I did gymnastics. I was in dance. I was in every little curricular
You were very
sport.
involved.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was just never an issue for me, and I was just always too busy, I guess, to even be aware of these things. And then I think once I started so with my dance, I was with a lot of older girls, and just different things that they would say, and they'd be oh, because they're wearing tight leotards and things like that. So they're going through puberty and they're going through life changes, and I would just overhear them, in the dressing room talking and being oh, this needs to be changed or whatnot. And then you just hear those things, and you kind of just pick up on it over time. And I was I was I've never thought about myself that way. And it kind of just programs different things within you. And then just without shoving anybody under the bus, because this is my story and not other people's, just certain people in my family, you just grow up around different things, different dialogues of how people talk about themselves, talk about their bodies, their relationship with food, and you kind of pick up on that and you adapt to that as well. And then I think I just, in general, when I would hear people pick themselves apart, it would be oh, am I supposed to do that about myself? It's almost a conditioning type of thing. So it wasn't something that I became super conscious about. And then like I said, got into puberty and all that good stuff. I think I just started to realize that people were maturing more than I was. And
I feel that. I feel that.
And like I said, I just turned 30. I feel I never developed in that way. And so that
Same.
was, I think,
Same.
which now I've come.
The itty bitty titty committee. Let's just call it what it is.
Amen.
Okay?
Amen.
I still pray, but I don't think it's happening. Unless someone wants to buy me tits, just putting that out there. Anyway, back to you.
No, totally. But I think that was my first real awareness of, oh, I don't like something about my body type of thing. And from there, it kind of stemmed into
And how old would you say approximately you were at this point?
that was probably in middle school, I would say. Like when people are like, "Oh, I'm getting my..."
You're like,
Sorry.
you're like 12
Sorry,
to
Bobby.
15. Yeah,
Like,
sorry, Bobby. Right when we met.
When we got our period is what I think
Yeah,
what
it was
you're
like when
getting
Mother
at.
Nature decides to rain down on everybody except for you.
Yep.
Basically.
Whoa, chill. It rained down on me just in a different way. Like I didn't hit puberty until I always used to say I hit 2 puberties, like because my, like I would say like sophomore, junior year, like, the balls dropped, got a little, like deeper voice and whatnot, but I never got like big boy muscles and facial hair. That didn't happen until college. And
True.
like
I
I
can
was
confirm.
a little, I was 135 pounds my senior year. Like that's for a guy, like that's a small dude. So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, but like I didn't have the late bloom like
Yeah,
you did.
yeah.
So like it's
just-
all good. But like obviously like now I've come to terms of acceptance with it. But at the time it was like I knew that I was supposed to be insecure about it. Like it was just like this conditioning, like, okay, if you don't have, B cup or whatever it is, or D cup by this age, like that was like my first issue with like my body and realizing like, oh, I need to be hyper aware of how my body looks.
And that was before we even had Instagram and social media too.
Right.
Like, because I remember being the same way. Like, I can't even imagine what kids must be going through today.
Oh
That's
my
wild to
gosh.
even think about. Oh,
Yeah. So, and then basically this translates into, like I said, like people in my family have definitely had like an influence on like my personal struggle, but I'm not going to throw them under the bus because I just don't feel like that's right to do. But they definitely did influence just like my eating patterns and just like different behaviors around food that I wasn't even consciously aware of. So it was just like things that I was doing because of my influence of what I'm around, like, nurture versus nature type of thing. So, going into, I guess, high school and like sort of transitioning into college, that's when it got like pretty heavy for me because I was in, what I've noticed is like what triggers me emotionally especially is breakups with significant others. And I think like a lot of people can relate to that. Like, what is the first thing that you do when you break up with somebody? You go and get the hot bod
the
and
revenge
you go,
body. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I don't know what that is, but it's always like, oh, I don't need to change anything about me except for my physical appearance, which like it just doesn't make
Which is like actually more than likely the polar opposite of what
Yeah.
needs to happen.
Right.
More than likely you need to change something within yourself.
100%.
I feel like I can always look back on, like you said, breakups. And like times like I'll look at my Instagram and I'm like, wow, I looked great. And then I think about it and I'm like,
Oh, that's when I
was
broke up with John.
Not even the breakup, but I was so empty and sad, but I look beautiful. Like, damn. But,
Totally.
But that, I feel like they definitely relate.
Yep, absolutely. So that's something that I've noticed is a trigger for me for whatever reason, but I feel like that's for a lot of people. But so it was like my first serious relationship. It went in from high school to college and then kind of broke up with me like going into college. And I think a lot of people, are familiar with the freshman 15 or whatever. So I was going through a breakup plus emotional eating, plus smoking a lot of weed, plus just like doing all the things that you shouldn't be doing. But it led me to, like I said, I was like very active growing up. So then that led me to, as you get older, you can't do every single activity. So all those things in contribution led me to gain more weight than I was used to gaining. And I did not like what I saw in the mirror.
So
Obviously.
can I ask, prior to
Yeah.
this, were you as conscious, would you say that you had an issue with food or an unhealthy relationship with food prior to this?
I did, but I wasn't aware of it until way later on in life.
Okay,
Like
okay.
these were things that I had done.
You're like looking back now. You're like, I had a problem. Is that kind of like what you're thinking?
Yes. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Like, so I like to say that I was basically raised in a drive-through because I was.
Like a food drive-through?
Yes.
Like McDonald's?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, like AM to PM. So I did, like I said, I was involved in a lot of activities on top of like sports and dancing. I was going to auditions for like just different things. I was just like very involved in like everything. Like I had my hands in all the baskets. So that's how I would get nourishment throughout my life, which is like there's nothing wrong with drive-thrus, but that's
When you were young, your body was processing it
Exactly.
differently than it does now that we're
And
30.
it's also hard when you're that involved in stuff. Like you can't just go and like go home and cook like a healthy meal or like whatever. Like you got to get something fast, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Because you're going from a sport to an audition to this. It's like, all right, well, what the fuck else is there? You know
And I
what
want to mention too, when Shannon says she's auditioning, she is a singer and she has a beautiful voice. So that's what these auditions were for.
Thank you, Katie. So basically, like that experience was like my first introduction to like binge eating, if you will, because I was like taught to eat and run, like rush while you eat type of thing. And it was just like, there was no like structure to my eating. Like I was never sitting down at a dinner table, like being present and like things like that. But as a child, you don't care. You love the drive-thru. You're like, yeah, freaking kids meal. Like,
fucking
cool.
chicken nuggets.
Yeah,
dude.
exactly. So like, that's what I mean when I say like, yes, it did start like earlier than I realized, but like you're not aware, you know what I mean? But that was like kind of my first introduction to those types of behaviors. And then like, as I mentioned, like as I got older, was in relationships with other people and those relationships fell apart. It would trigger an insecurity, trigger like sensitivity within my physical appearance. And then that led me to be like, okay, so how do I change this? And that led to me throwing up my food like all the time. And it was really challenging because when you're in college, you have a roommate. And I'm pretty sure she knew and just didn't say anything because that's kind of an awkward conversation to have.
How do you bring that up? Like, hey,
You don't.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
So like I was running the shower all the time. Like, so it's like nobody gets a shower that many times a day. So
But
it's
the shower
like,
doesn't really cover it up. I mean, we've all been at a significant other's house trying to run the water when we like have to go number 2, and like these things they don't cover it up.
I'm like over here like, girls do that?
Yeah.
well, sometimes I was also, to be fair, sometimes I was also running the shower and doing like the whole like smoking and like doing the air dryer thing with like, do you know what I'm
okay.
talking about?
Yeah, if you run the shower while you, like if you smoke a bowl or whatever, you run the shower
'Cause you're in a dorm.
and you blow it through a air dry like or
What is it?
a dryer sheet.
Yeah, that's what
Or
it
a
is.
dryer sheet. Okay.
Blast from the
okay.
past. But yeah,
Yeah.
so in fairness, it wasn't always that.
Isn't
So
it
like,
weird, like back in the day,
We
like,
didn't have
smoking
showers
weed
in our
was, like-
dorms though in Bloomsburg. We just had beds.
Yeah.
oh well, I was in a fancy dorm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
we
were
didn't
they
have
were
that
new.
there.
They were new.
I just think it's funny how like we all used to like hide pot and like now it's like not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
no one
no.
gives a fuck
I'm freaking
about it.
moving to Colorado. Like- but yeah, so true story. That's like how that behavior exhibited in my life wasn't until like heavily until high school, college type of thing. I did stuff like that before, but it wasn't habitual. It was never like, oh, this is what I do on a daily basis. But then,
So can I ask, did it
Yeah,
become
sure.
a daily thing for you?
oh yeah, mm-hmm.
And how long did that last? And I want to say too, like this is potentially going to be a triggering episode for people. So if
Yeah, we should have also put that in the disclaimer.
Yeah.
My bad. But I was hoping that you know, maybe people would pick up on that, but maybe
Yeah.
not. So
Nah, they're good.
my bad. Yeah, because I know that like back maybe like 2 years ago, I couldn't have listened to an episode like this. So
and
yes.
I think you're also here to say that is okay.
yes, it totally is. You know, come back to it when you're ready.
And if you're never ready,
That's also fine.
Yeah.
so okay. So how long would you say that period lasted for you?
It's hard to say because I did go on and off with it. Because I knew the damage that it was doing, and like you were saying, like I'm a singer, so
I didn't even think about that.
it was doing like massive damage to. Thankfully, it didn't do enough damage to my vocal cords to damage them permanently. But
Yeah, because she still crushes it. So
thank you. But yeah, so it was like an on and off thing, but it was on a daily basis for. Even though it was on and off, like, you know, on and off relationships, it was probably like, I'm trying to think. Wow, maybe longer than I thought. Probably like 8 years, probably.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's interesting too is we were talking about this a little bit beforehand with Liv. Shout out to episode 19. She does a lot of work with women who suffer from eating disorders, and she had said to me an interesting piece of it is, and it sounds like what you're describing sounds a lot like addiction, right? Because it essentially is an addiction. However, you can't escape food. It's part of your life every single day, and it's not like the drug that you can put down and walk away from and never come back to again. It's there every day, and you need it to live.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I can't.
I
and
never thought about that.
Me either. And having her put that in our heads before, and now listening to you talk about this, I'm like, oh my God. Well, no wonder it was back and forth for so long. Like, you can't.
Food's a
literally-
necessity.
Yeah, you cannot run it.
Heroin isn't, you know what I mean? So
Right.
like it's, you know, not saying that they're comparable in this case, but like, you know, it's I never thought about that as far as like comparing it to a drug addiction.
Well, it sounds like an addiction. From what you're describing, sounds exactly like an addiction.
Yeah, it's the addiction of like control. It's the addiction of I can manipulate this situation. I can have my cake and eat it too, because I was
Literally.
eating, but then I was instantly throwing it up. But like the same concept with addiction applies. Like it's isolating. It's a big secret. Like, Bobby, you've known me for a long time. Like, if you knew, like, please say something. But I don't think
No.
you
I
did.
mean, definitely not from, I would say, definitely not middle school, without a doubt. I also was, I mean, you also have to remember I was like a young, dumb kid too as well. So, like, you know, like.
Who knows anything?
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, I barely know anything now, and I'm almost 30.
But I think it's an interesting concept, though. It's if you lose weight, we're like, oh, good for her. She's working out. Like, cool. That's good. You wouldn't expect to be like, oh, she's probably puking every day. Like, your head wouldn't even go there, especially that young.
But that's the thing is, like, that was part of the reason. Well, I mean, it is a big secret because it's like, why are you going to shout from the top of the roofs like that you have an eating disorder? You don't want people to know how you're keeping your body the way you're keeping it.
And two,
right?
if you say it out loud, it becomes real. And and if you do that, that's
and then it
when you're
makes
like,
you feel like
shit.
you're doing something wrong. But what I'm doing is working, so I'm not going to tell anybody.
Right.
Right. So, and it's like what you said, like all the times when people would compliment my body, like,
It was an affirmation for you.
yeah, exactly. So
Like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing what you say. Compared to the Eagles, run the goddamn ball. Keep running the ball until it stops working. If this is working, if I'm getting all these compliments, I'm gonna keep
people
doing
were
what I'm
telling
doing.
me that it was working. They were confirming that I looked good, but they didn't. And that's the thing is like, and I've done this unintentionally as well. Like I've complimented people on their weight loss, but like, and I think everybody's intentions are good. You want to compliment somebody, right? But you don't necessarily know what you're supporting by complimenting
so
somebody's weight loss.
I never thought about it like that before.
And it sucks though, because like complimenting someone is a good thing, and you don't want to stop doing it because of one instance. Not saying that like this, I mean, this is obviously very powerful and very emotional for you, and it's important to discuss these things, but you don't want to stop complimenting someone on possibly getting healthy on the fact that they might be abusing their body in this sense. And it's like, well, fuck, like, what do I do? You know what I
do
mean?
want to get back to this because I'm interested to see what your take is on what the alternative is, but I want to let you get through your story first.
No, it's okay.
too.
It's kind of long. But like what you were saying, like, it's just like, you know, we've been conditioned through society. Like, forget my story. We've all been conditioned to think that weight loss equals health, or what your weight is equals that you're healthy in some form or whatever. It's like you can be at any size and be healthy. Your weight and your appearance literally has nothing to do with your health. Like, they're not interchangeable. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
I would say to a point.
Well,
Because,
yes,
yeah,
to a
because
point.
like if you're 5 foot nothing and 300 pounds, I don't care. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
yes,
there's,
yes.
yeah.
But okay, yeah, I should have worded that differently. I just meant like people think like only if you are skinny
fucking
or like
shredded, yeah,
yeah,
you know
or
what I
like
mean?
for you, right? Exactly. Like that means you're healthy. Well, you don't know how they got to that point. Maybe the way that they did it was super unhealthy.
I mean, steroids.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely,
Like-
absolutely.
And I think too that's an interesting point because eating disorders don't always have to be people who are super thin, right? They could be people who are binge eating, people who are overweight too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like people who, like, you know, you would, what did you say, the breakup body? You would get the breakup body, right? You know, there's people who break up and they're like, I am going to eat everything in my path
Yep,
because
it
I'm
works both
feeling
ways.
this way. Yeah, either I'm sad, or I know a lot of people who stress eat. I'm actually one of them. When I'm stressed out, I'm like, get me a fucking cheesesteak right now and a beer. You know what I mean? And then I eat that, and then before you know it, mozzarella sticks are coming out, and then, you know, you're like, God damn it, now I'm hungry.
Making me
Oh,
hungry.
yeah, I know, right? And it's like, and you just keep going, and you know, that's some form of an addiction or some form of a you know, an eating disorder, in the sense that you're constantly bringing food in as opposed to you are doing the polar opposite. But they're the same problem, just cut from a different cloth.
Yes. And like I've been on all ends of the spectrum. I've done like the emotional binge eating, and I've also done the starve myself for 3 days and throw up, and like, so I've been on all ends of the spectrum for the most part throughout my life. And it's just like it's so interesting because there's so many people like it's just normalized in our society. It's normalized to skip breakfast. It's normalized to, like, do you know what I mean? Just like,
well, I think even, and I don't know enough about this to comment, but
go ahead.
What is it called? Intermittent fasting. I'm like, isn't that anorexia?
How
Like,
about we
I'm
say that for a
sorry.
different episode, because I have a lot of different things to
When
say
I first
about
heard it,
that.
I'm like, my mom did this one diet one time that was like consume 500 calories a day. I'm like, that is quite literally, if you, I mean, I haven't done research on it in a while, but 10 years ago when I was looking up stuff about anorexia, like that is what anorexics shoot for, 500 calories a day, no more. I'm like, and that's a diet that's like, and there's a doctor that,
yeah, the intermittent fasting, it's probably just like everything else. There's pros and there's cons to it, and it's your choice if you want to run through that and whatnot. Because there's the same thing. There's probably people out there who say having a cheat meal is not, because basically the cheat meal.
But what is a cheat meal though? What does that even mean?
Well, a cheat meal.
What does that even mean?
Would be shocking your body with an overload of calories, because then it makes your fat cell or your body burns faster, because it's like, oh my gosh, I have all these calories, so your body will burn fat faster, and then you're like, oh, all this, and then it keeps everything going, and then you go back to your normal diet the next day, and it stays at that basically that speed of burning calories. Again, there's probably some pros to that, there's probably some cons, there's probably some real science to it, there's probably some fake science to it. The opposite would be intermittent fasting, where you shock your body of not having anything in there and then going back and forth. And again, pros, cons, real facts, no facts. But that was always my understanding of cheat meals versus intermittent fasting.
Well, okay, intermittent fasting, whatever. And like you said, to each his own. That's what I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
And the opposite of cheat day or whatever you want to call it. It's like either or. Your body has a natural set point. It has a natural homeostasis. So I don't give a damn what you do, intermittent fast or cheat day, or you had a bad weekend and you did all these things. Like, your body is naturally, no matter what you did, your body is naturally going to go back to its natural set point and homeostasis. And there's nothing, like, unless you're doing something like crazy, like every single day of your life, like your body knows what it's doing, period. Like, yeah, you might shock your system, so to speak, or your metabolism, but that's because your body's like trying to figure out what the hell you're doing, because you're not like doing normal things. Yes, exactly. So it's like, I just personally, I stay away from those phrases like cheat days and cheat meals and like whatever, because that's like my personal preference.
Well, every meal for me is a cheat meal.
Yeah, but that's interesting.
But that's the thing, is like, it's commentary like that
tells
puts
us that it's
these
bad.
negative stigmas in people's head, making people think that certain foods are bad and certain foods, but it's like everything in moderation is actually freaking okay.
So how did you get to that point? Can I ask that?
That
Because
is
what you're describing right now is very far from where you were.
I know.
Before.
It's actually funny. It's taken me a lot, because honestly, like,
was there like a defining moment for you?
Sort of. So, like, I didn't want to get help at first. And like I said, it was a big secret. Like, it wasn't like I was telling people. And, like, even when I was, like, back at home with my parents, like, I would do the same thing, like, run the shower and, like, throw up and, like, whatever. And don't quote me on the statistics. But in terms of mental illness, the second leading cause of death is eating disorders. So
Really?
that was not enough to, like, shock me out of.
I'm assuming suicide would be number one, right?
I think it's opioids actually, or like something along those lines, like drug addiction.
Okay.
Like I said, don't quote me, but I know it's up there on the list of mental health in death. And that's another thing, is like people with eating disorders are more prone to suicide also.
And I think too,
They're probably more prone to getting sick too, because their immune system is not working the way. So
I lost my period. Like, there's so many physical things that happen to you, like when like you go through stuff like this.
but a lot of time too, mental illness is coupled with eating disorders, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people that suffer from one also suffer from the other. Yeah.
I have several. Okay, so yes.
it's cool. We each have
yes,
multiple
You're
personalities.
in good company, baby girl.
Yeah. So, and that's what this podcast is for, right?
Yeah, but it's not called a regular for
The
nothing.
mentally ill.
Yes.
But like, none of those things, like I said, like, I lost my period, like, my hormones were totally off, my mood was off. Like, okay, you're hangry all the time because you're either not eating or whatever, so you know how that is. Like, your mood is totally off, your hormones are off, just all these things, but none of that was enough to get me to stop. I was like, well, I still kind of look like, but that's the thing, it's like, I never, no matter how much weight I lost, no matter like what I was doing, I still wasn't happy. It was never enough. It was like this empty void that I'm constantly trying to fill. And like, it was just like this back and forth thing, but none of that was enough to get me to stop doing what I was doing. So like what I had mentioned before was, it started to affect my throat. It started to affect my singing, which like, I don't know, like for whatever, like even as I say it now, like I have chills because like that's just something that's like very special to me. It's like my outlet in life. It's like music is huge to me. Like I guess that's like one of my biggest fears is like losing my voice, and if that happens, like whatever. But it's just like that was kind of like my wake up call that I was like, okay. Well,
like the one thing I'm passionate about is almost
and
gone.
Could you feel it? Could you hear it? Like what?
Yeah, like it was bad. Like
you're like, what were your symptoms? Did it hurt
I was like,
to sing?
Like
or
my
was
throat
it...
was like bleeding, and
God.
and it was just like wasn't good. And I was like, oh, well, I don't want to cause like permanent damage to my vocal cords. So I was like, well, this is me. How can I get around this? Well, I'll just starve myself instead and not do the throwing up and not eat. So it just like transitioned into something else. But at least I was able to get rid of that one behavior, which is how I was thinking in my head. And
that's really interesting for me to hear because, again, as everybody knows who listens to this, like I listen to metalcore music, and a lot of people are like, "How do those guys like not trash their throat?" And there's actually like a like physical way of doing it without trashing your throat and your vocal cords to not damage them. And now I'm sitting here thinking like, "Oh my gosh, the amount of times that like I've gotten drunk and puked, like has that like if I was a vocalist, like
I don't think so because it's like I'm forcing it. Like sometimes your body does need you to throw up. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think it's necessarily
and also it would
the
be
same,
like the quantity amount of times. You
Well,
know
it'd be
what I
like
mean?
if you were getting drunk every single day and puking every single day.
Exactly.
If that were the case, I think you'd be more worried about
Maybe.
alcoholism than.
But I get that. I'm just sitting there thinking, like, man, like I wonder, like, if there are like metalcore vocalists who do suffer from a eating disorder, and it damages their throat, and before you know it, they have to stop doing what they love.
I
And
think any vocalist would. I think any singer would.
Well, I just like I said, I relate it because of the screaming aspect. You know what I mean?
No,
Because
totally.
you're already pushing it beyond
To
its
the limit,
limits.
yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So that's really interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah. And so, but like I said, then I just made it transition into something else. Do you know what I mean? And then I was just like, all right, now I need to get on my shit and be anorexic. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's how my brain was working. And like you said, like, you're like, oh, well, you're in such a different place now. Like, I really am. Because sometimes, like, when I look back, I'm like, how did I even, like, I know how because it's part of the way I was raised. Like, there's so many contributing factors. But it's just like, I am in a better place right now, and I say that not to be like, oh, I'm in a better place, but like seriously, like my story is like not like maybe the most severe or like whatever, but like that doesn't mean that like you can't get help, and that doesn't mean that you can't be better. Like you don't, and I think that's like one of the biggest problems is that people think you need to look a certain way to have an eating disorder or like have an issue with your relationship with food or like have issues that need to be addressed, which is not true.
Well, I think one common theme that we're finding during this podcast is we bring on people who have been through tough things more often than not. And I think I can say off the top of my head, you're the third person in a row who has said, I know people have had it worse. I know my story isn't as bad. And I think one thing that we want to really say here is that don't compare. We've said it a million times. Comparison is the thief of joy. Mm-hmm. Your story, just because you weren't hospitalized on the brink of death,
right?
That does not mean that it wasn't as hard as that. Comparing your story is
everybody's struggle is valid,
absolutely,
no matter what.
Yeah.
Period.
So I definitely wanted to say, Shannon, we hear you, and thank you first of all for opening up about this and for putting yourself out there. But your struggle was valid. This is 8 years of puking is a lot.
I know.
A lot of years.
I know.
A lot of years.
I know. Saying that out loud is kind of crazy. But
so did you ultimately wind up like seeking help, or did you find it within yourself?
So I did seek help, but all the help that I sought was kind of like I didn't want the help. Like I wasn't ready to get the help. So it was just like everything they said, I would just be like, yeah. And then like I would just totally just not even.
Well, we've said it before on the podcast. Like most people that are looking for help, they're not going to help themselves, or they're not going to take the help unless they want to help themselves first. And clearly you didn't want to help yourself, but you were just doing, what felt the right thing was to do, was to go get the help.
Totally.
And I think what's interesting that a lot of people might not know, I'm interested to see, Bobby, if you know this, there is actual support groups out there for eating disorders. Like if you're like for to say, go Shannon, don't stop puking, you can do this. Like there's girls out there that will rally behind you to push you to do better in the eating disorder, which is like so sad. And it is. And they're not hard to find. Like they're out there, and it feels like your friends. It feels like people that are there like trying to like push you to be a better you, but like it's just so not realistic at all.
But like that also just exists in general in culture, as I've been saying. Like you don't even have to look far. Like for a support group, like people will literally celebrate your weight loss, like we said, like no matter what the reason was that you got there. So it's just like it's sad, and like
Was there a person that turned it around for you? Was it kind of just the thing that you did on your own? Like
it was kind of like I had seen a bunch of different people. They either like nutritionists or holistic people or like whatever. And like the thing is, like I was never being totally honest with them. Like I was never going in depth of actually being like, oh well, like this.
What does that sound like? What does that sound like? People who are trying to get out of a drug addiction.
Yeah.
It
is though.
Exactly. It's how we compared it earlier. Yeah, how we compared it earlier to drug addiction. It sounds exactly like that because most people who are suffering from a drug addiction who go to get help, they usually lie. That's the first thing they do. They lie. They don't tell the whole truth. I'm getting this, or I did this today. That was really great. When they really didn't. They went and got high, or they went and did something else.
Like, it's not like you were trying to be manipulative. You were just probably trying to protect yourself in some way.
It was like I was on the fence. It was like I knew I needed help, but I didn't want to stop. Because I was like, well, what's going to happen when I stop? Like, I was afraid of what was going to happen to me. What was my identity going to be? Because I literally wrapped my identity up in my weight, in a number, on a scale, which is absurd. But when you're living in that, that's all you think about. Like, there is no rationale. That's what mental health disorders are. They're irrational fears. They're irrational thoughts. And, like, it was just, it's an obsession. It was like no matter what I was doing, I was constantly thinking about food. Even if I wasn't eating it, I'm thinking about 24/7.
It also didn't help that for a long time you worked in the restaurant industry as well too.
Yeah, that was weird. That was totally weird. Yeah. But like that, like you don't really get to eat when you're working anyway. No. Like they literally starve you.
But you're surrounded by it still though, so
100%.
then that helps keep those thoughts rolling in your head.
It makes you so much hungrier. So much hungrier.
Yeah.
A French fry tastes like filet mignon every time when you're hungry at work. Every time.
I told myself I refused. It's funny that we actually say this because I told myself when I was really, really young, what are you, like 12, 13, when you start like looking for like jobs where they're like bullshit things. I told myself I refuse to work in any type of food industry because I knew that I would be 300 pounds. I knew because I would not stop. Because if I worked at Wendy's, it would be every now and then I'm just going to walk over, I'm going to grab a chicken nugget. You know what I mean? I'm eating it and that's it. And then before you know it, and, with wrestling, that's the last thing, that I should be doing because I was cutting weight for wrestling. But if I had work on Sunday, best believe that my shift meal is going to be a number 3, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm going to eat that shit, and then I'm going to eat.
What's in number 3? Do you know off the top?
Off the top of my head from Wendy's? Mm-hmm. Number 3? It's a 10-piece chicken nugget. Come on, dude. Come on. Listen, I love my food, and Wendy's my bitch. So, like, you know what I mean? Yeah, and now they got spicy. Let's go. But, yeah, so, like, I knew for a fact that if I worked in any type of, whether it was Wendy's or, like, a pizza joint or something like that, I would, because I don't have self-control. You know what I mean? Or I did for a little bit, but then, it went away after high school.
But that kind of, like, brings me back to what I was saying about how, like, they starve you when you're working at a restaurant. Like, well, why am I thinking about food 24/7? Because I'm starving myself. Because I'm not freaking eating. That's why. So it's like you become less obsessed and it becomes less of an addiction when you're just eating, when you're supposed to be eating, when your body tells you it's hungry, freaking eat. Yeah. Like, and it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be something super healthy. Like, if you want to eat a number 3 at Wendy's, like, freaking go for it. Your body's hungry. Like, it'll forgive you later. And like I said, homeostasis, like, it will go back to its natural set point. You're not going to gain 15, whatever it is. Like, it's not going to throw you off or whatever just because you ate something that your body was like, I'm hungry, let me eat that.
I think it's so interesting that you can talk about it this way because hearing that is inspiring. I mean, I think if
I'm gonna go get Wendy's.
but I'm saying, I feel
let's all go to Wendy's after this guy.
I'm down. I'm hungry. But okay, so I think pretty much, I don't want to say everyone because I don't know for sure, but a lot of people are at least conscious about what they're putting in their body, whether they know they're eating like shit every single day. Like, we think about it, right? And hearing you say this, you are on the extreme of being so conscious and not eating at all, and now you're able to talk about food in such a healthy way, a healthier way than I can talk about it. I mean, I'm sitting here going over in my head all the things I ate after I left Bobby's house last night. And just after his mom made his tacos, I went home and ate so much more, and I'm like, well, was I hungry? Was I stressed? And like, you're just like, who cares? You ate it, and today's a new day. Like, I think it's so interesting that you were able to get from point A to point B, and regardless of how you got there, what that defining moment was for you, like, how do you feel now on the other side?
Well, that's one thing I will say though. Like, as much as I can talk about like who cares and like whatever, it's not like I don't ever have those compulsions. It's not like I don't ever have those thoughts anymore. I do. It's just like I know, like,
you'd be lying to yourself if you did.
Yeah,
if you
like,
Well,
said
I mean,
you
it's like an
didn't.
addiction,
like
right?
it is a
Like,
lifelong thing. Like, it's always going to be something that is surfacing in the back of my mind, always. But the difference is that I don't solicit to those behaviors anymore. That's the difference. So it's like I know that they're there, but it's like I've gained a different sense of control where it's like I'm literally in control now.
oh,
The
I wish
eating
we could give
disorder,
you like a round of applause.
like,
for that one.
Yeah.
Like, that's good for you, dude.
like
That's
the eating
amazing.
disorder is in control. I'm actually in control. Whereas like before, it was tricking me into think that like my eating disorder and me were the same, and like that's the only way I could maintain control. When really the control is me saying no to the eating disorder.
Oh, amen. That was profound.
That was good. Yeah,
Hell
that
yeah.
was really good.
So okay, so circling back to praising people for being thin, like what? Because I'm trying to think, like I want to give people compliments, like Bobby
Yeah.
said. Like, what's the a better way to go about that? I guess.
Like I said, like I've done this too. Like, and this is something that like I've had to learn like over the years, because like I didn't realize like how detrimental it was until people started doing it to me. And then I was like, wait, I've totally complimented people, and that girl was probably like on a coke binge like last weekend. like
Right.
like I don't want to support that, you know. So it's like I don't know. I think it's just important, like, to just be mindful whenever you're commenting on somebody's body. Like, I just don't think that you should comment on people's bodies.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, and people can say otherwise. Like, that's fine. Like I said, to each his own. But, like,
I feel like if the door's opened by that person, then it's okay. Because, like, if someone, you know, for example, I know some people who have lost some, like, considerable, like, people who were, you know, like I said, like 5'2" and 400 pounds.
yeah, and you want to acknowledge it.
Yeah,
I get it.
and
I get it.
they, you know, and they've lost all this weight and they've talked about it, and you're like, okay, good job, John. You know what I mean? Like, that is awesome. You look killer. Like, who was I talking to the other day? I saw someone and they had lost like a nice amount of weight, but I saw them at the gym, so they were healthy, and I was like, dude, you look good, man. They're like, thanks, man. I've been busting my ass. You know what I mean? Like, so because you don't want to miss out on those opportunities, because
No, and I get
sometimes
it.
people need that extra push.
But I
like,
think maybe another good thing would just be to say, hey, you look really happy. Like, you're glowing. Like, what, you know,
Right.
share with me what's going on with you right now. And I think maybe they'd be like, oh, you know, I've been working out and eating better. And then maybe you can transition into
I'm not
it.
saying like, oh, don't ever comment on somebody's body. I just think it's like it's a slippery slope. Do you know what I
Absolutely.
mean? Because you don't always know what you're complimenting. And like I said, it's hard for me too, because you want to acknowledge those things. You notice it, so you want to acknowledge it. And it's never, I don't think anybody's ever coming from a place of like, oh, I want them to continue to self-harm. Like, no, it's not like that. Your intentions are pure.
Yeah.
But like internally to that person, it could have like detrimental effects, and it sometimes does. So I just think it's just important to be mindful of it is all. I'm not saying like don't ever do it, but
yeah, because it could be the opposite. You know what I mean? It could be the opposite. There could be someone who is busting their ass, eating healthy, you know, working out real hard to lose this weight, but they have these thoughts of like going back to their old ways. Like, I
They
haven't
need encouragement.
I haven't
Yeah.
gotten that compliment yet. Nobody said anything like, yo, you look good. And because I haven't gotten that yet, what am I doing here? And I give up. But it takes that one compliment that says, hey, man, or, you know, hey, girl, you look great, you know, and you're like, fuck yeah, I'm going to keep going. I got that compliment. So it's like you said, it's very polarizing where, like, you
is.
could say it, and someone be like, okay, now you're affirming the fact that I have this eating disorder, you know, and it's working. So I'm going to continue to self-harm, essentially. And then there's the other side where it could be a life-changing moment for them to be like, okay, well, there was my first compliment. And that's why, I mean,
I know.
I've had it before. I've had people be
tricky.
like, yo, man, I like that outfit. I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, I just went out and bought this. You know what I mean? Like, let's go. You know, and I feel good about myself for a couple days. And then it's like back to self-deprecation. But, but yeah. So like, it's really interesting to think about that aspect where it's like, where do you
I just think
where
it's
do you draw
important.
that line?
I
You
know,
what mean?
and it is hard because I have to ask myself that question too. Because but the bottom line and the point I was just trying to make is I just think it's important to bring awareness to that, because even for myself, who's somebody who struggled with that, I've also made that same mistake and, you know, unintentionally complimented poor behavior to somebody. So it's like, I think it's just more so just being aware, because I think we just say things a lot of the times off the cuff and we don't think about like our interactions with people and how that can have an effect. So yeah, I don't have an answer for that.
That's okay.
I'm still working on that
You don't
myself.
need one, though. You don't
I
need
know.
one.
I'm just
No.
saying. I'm still
The
trying
point
to
is that
figure
we're
that out.
talking
as
about
well.
it, and now
Yeah.
hopefully people can walk away from this
We
at least
stir up a
thinking about it.
discussion.
Yeah, just thinking about it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Do you have any advice for someone who, like, again, you said that you had mentioned that, like, if you're not in the right headspace, it might be tough to listen to,
Totally.
basically what we just talked about for the last now 52 minutes. But, what would you say to someone who can make it through this episode, or even if they can't make it through this episode, to, like, as far as to get help, or like, what is step one, essentially?
Okay, so everybody's different. So like I said at the beginning, like I'm not here to prescribe anybody anything, but the things that helped me the most was not stepping on the scale. That was number one thing. And I know that's so hard for people. Like literally,
Just throw it the fuck out.
like
Yeah, I don't have a scale because I didn't have quite nearly your journey, but I mean, I think a lot of women, a lot of people in general struggle with this.
I have
Like,
a scale. I step on it every day.
You don't have to
And I
have
had
like
to
an
stop.
eating disorder to struggle with
Yeah,
body image.
I
I
had
think
to
it's for
throw out my
everybody. It's
scale.
universal.
I can't do it. I don't. I judge by how my clothes fit and how I feel, because if I look at a number, it will drive me insane.
I have a scale. I step on it every day. Every day.
All right, we're gonna go throw your scale up.
I would do that. Oh my god, that would drive me.
But-
that
Oh,
would
it
drive.
does-
I used
oh,
to
it
weigh
does drive
myself
me
like
insane.
5 or 6 times a day just to
That was
see
my
what I
life.
could do. Like
That was my life.
Like if I pee, will I lose like 0.2? Like
No, it's absurd.
Yeah,
It's absurd.
I know
and I
exactly
don't mean like
what
you're
that's like.
absurd, but I'm just saying
No,
like that's
yeah.
what it is. And
Yeah.
that's why it's like I think and that's really hard for some people. So like you said, like if you're not ready to do that, like you're ready when you're ready. But it's like that was something that really helped me because it was like I no longer was even aware. Like you
have no measurement,
you
yeah.
know in your body when your body feels different. You do not need to step on something to tell you, how, like, because this is what it was doing. It was affecting this is how I would see my day going every single day. So first thing I do is I body check in the mirror, lift up my shirt, whatever, like, how do I look today? And then that dictated my mood for the rest of the day. It's like, it was like, that was me signaling, okay, how are we going to feel about ourselves today? You're like, why? You don't need
That's insanity. Yeah.
You don't need to do that. It doesn't need to dictate the way your day goes. I can still have a great day and like maybe I'm a little heavier than I was yesterday. Who the fuck gives a shit? I'm sorry, that was like really inappropriate, but I mean that sincerely.
I agree.
And it's just
Fully.
like, but that's what I was doing to myself. I was setting myself up for failure every single day because I was like, okay, are we going to be in a good mood today? Are we going to be in a bad mood today? And it's like, that's so crazy. And so that was like my biggest thing is like try as best as you can, like not to weigh yourself. Like just don't do it. Like it's unnecessarily, like you can trust your body and like you need to, at some point you should be able to learn how to do that because your body is always going to be different throughout the rest of your life. And if you can't come to a term of acceptance with it, like now, like how are you going to be when you're 44 or like when you're 74? Like your body is not going to be the same from day to day nor year to year. And so like, I think another thing that helped me was just like you said, like, it's not necessarily like you have to like love your body every single day. I think the first step is just acceptance, just accepting it. You don't have to love it. You just have to like accept it for what it is. It is a vehicle that carries you through life. That's essentially all it is. It is skin and like
Bones,
exactly.
muscle.
And I think acceptance over aesthetic is like the biggest thing for me because that's all I was focused on was the aesthetic. And I'm not saying that like you can't have an ideal for your body or whatever, but I just think it should be secondary to acceptance because like I said, like if you have this ideal of an aesthetic, well, that aesthetic is going to go away when you're like 44 or 50. Like I said, like you change. So you have to be able to accept your body in all forms at all stages. So those two
I think
things.
that's huge because like I definitely know what that's like. You know what I mean? Like I've accepted that I'll never have a six pack. It's just I never have. Even when I was a skinny little boy back in high school, I've never had a six pack of mine. It's just not how I'm genetically made up. But so I've accepted that, but I still haven't accepted the fact that I still don't like how I look. You know what I mean? But those are two totally different things. You know what I mean? Like, and one is easy to accept and one is hard to accept. And obviously I haven't gotten there
It's
to that
a process,
point. You know what
though.
I mean?
But like at least you're aware of it. I think awareness is always the first step to anything. Like awareness then leads to acceptance. So you're on the right track, Bob.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you for the affirmations. I love it.
Yeah, but I think those two things would be my biggest thing. I think like And also seek help if you're able to. I know that's not accessible to everyone, but I also think that like therapy is helpful because I don't know.
You don't have to like be reserved when you say that. We fucking love therapy on
I
here.
just posted about it today on our Instagram.
Yeah, no. I just like I know like some people are like, well, I can't go to therapy, and like that's totally valid. But I'm just saying like if you are able or like whatever, I think it is helpful to talk to somebody because the behaviors are just symptoms of an underlying feeling or emotion that's not being met. That's what it is at the end of the day. Like
another set of powerful words. I love that.
All the behaviors are symptoms. Like everything that I was doing, like that wasn't the problem. Like that was part of the problem, but the real problem is
so much deeper. Yeah.
Right, it's what you're numbing, it's what you're distracting from, it's what you're afraid of or like whatever. So that's why I think it's helpful to get to the root, and that's why I am able to look back now and be like, oh, connect the dots, and this is how this all came up to be, all came like to pass. So it's just like, yeah.
Awesome.
I'm like, I described this last episode that Bobby was just like back in his chair, just like eyes wide, like, oh my God, that's how I feel this time. Everything you're saying, I'm like, whoa,
here we are.
Mind blown. Like, this makes so much sense. And I'm like, holy shit.
I think it was great. I mean, as always, we usually offer, we kind of did just kind of get them, but just in case, you never know, like offer our guests a closing argument or anything else that you want to say. I think we kind of just got that, but if there is one more thing, feel free to fire away at that.
We're going to Wendy's.
So number 3. Are we getting number 3 spices or? But
I don't know.
Are you open to people reaching out to you and speaking to this?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like I honestly do have a lot of conversations with people like this, like either in my DMs or like whatever. And like I said, like I'm not here to like necessarily give advice because I don't think that that's.
Yeah, but some of the best advice comes from people who have, 1, been through it, and 2, who are your peers. So, like, if someone is a 30-year-old young female, excuse me, who is struggling with this but hasn't said anything to anybody because they're afraid to talk to their therapist.
I'm here for support all day, but like I can't be the one to like guide you through it because I feel like everybody is individual in their experience. So
you're
like
a shoulder to lean on.
I'm totally here for support. I'm totally here if you ever want to talk, but like don't like I'm not your guru, you know.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you'd like to discuss?
And I also just want to say, like, I think I mentioned it before, but like, you know, like I said, your struggle doesn't have to be super severe in order for you to address these things or think that you need help. If anything of what I said, like, no offense, like triggered you or like made you feel a certain way, like that is a good indication, not necessarily that you have an eating disorder, but that you should evaluate your relationship with food and you should evaluate your relationship with your body. And like, it is so common that it's just like not something that you should ever be ashamed of ever, because I think it's so much more common than we realize. And that's kind of why I wanted to like open up this discussion, is just for people to feel like they can talk about it and they can be free to be like, oh, wow, somebody understands and I'm not alone, because things like this are very isolating and they're, like I said, it's a big secret. So it doesn't have to be a secret.
And it doesn't have to be the worst of the worst. I think if you're triggered and you're feeling like, oh, you know, I kind of think that too, talk to someone, talk to Shannon, talk to.
Honestly, I think what you said there was a great, like a great point, in the sense that, like, if anything you heard in this episode made you feel a certain type of way, it might be time to like look in the mirror.
It's
not a bad thing, but it might be time to look in the mirror and say, oh shit, like, let's, like you said, reevaluate this. Let's
because
evaluate.
It can get dangerous very quickly.
It's a slippery slope, you know.
And I think like a lot of people aren't aware, like, you know what I mean? Because I said like a lot of things are normalized that actually aren't normal. So like some people might not even be aware that like they are, you know, being super rigid or being super restrictive with things that they don't necessarily need to do that are actually harmful to their bodies or harmful to themselves.
It's lonely.
And their mental health, like, period. Like, eating disorders are a mental health disorder, period. So
I love it. So on that note, Shannon, thank you so much. I know this is a very, like we had mentioned before, you know, it's a very emotional topic. It's very difficult to discuss.
And her eyes welled up with tears a couple times during this episode. So thank you.
Yeah, we do.
My heart's beating very fast.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not easy to talk about this stuff, but that's what this platform's for, and I'm happy that that you reached out and said, hey, like, this is something I'm passionate about. Also, I'm kind of fucking moving to Colorado in 4 days, so.
And ironically, it is National Eating Disorder Awareness Week, correct?
It is.
So the stars aligned, and
here we are.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So if you want, you know, you said that you don't mind people reaching out. If you want to plug your Instagram or whatever social media, how people can get a hold of you, feel free to do that now.
You can slide into my DMs at Shannon, SHANNONNN, so 3 N's, and then Teal, TEAL. That's my middle name.
There you go.
I never knew that. I always wondered where the teal came from.
I'm Shannon Teal.
I knew that. I've also known her since I was 12. So.
Oh. All right,
Yeah.
Bobby, what's your Instagram? Give it to him.
Everyone
Yo,
knows.
Bob.
Yeah, thank you. See, she knows. Feel free to follow my personal Instagram. It's at yobob, EYOOO_BOB, and make sure you follow the irregular Instagram page as well, at Irregular Podcast.
And of course, my Instagram page. Don't mess up the spelling of my name, or I will come for you at 3 a.m. Apparently, it is at KAITY_ANI. Also, don't forget to join our Facebook group.
And on that note, we will talk to you next Thursday. Love you.
Love you guys.